Welcome to Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael G. Neece, president of Our Future is Kind, and your trusted companion as we search out kindness strategies we can use in our everyday lives. Together, as we chase the idea of building a kinder future, we will interview experts in kindness, team building, human motivation, corporate culture building, relationships, plus politicians, artists, and those with a vision for a healthy and kind future, one we all want to live in and deserve to enjoy together. In addition to interviews, we will consider positive depictions of humanity's future in art, literature, the movies, and media. And we will issue kindness challenges each week, give an update about Our Future is Kind, the company, and what it's doing to stay true to its mission. So, let's dive in. Before enjoying this episode of Our Future is Kind podcast, I just want to remind you, on November 13th, World Kindness Day, the Human Summit is taking place. It is 4 hours with community, trying to understand how we can put more kindness out into the world. If you feel like what's going on in the world right now is leaving you powerless, like you're not really sure how to overcome the obstacles of feeling overwhelmed, you don't know how to stay kind to yourself because you're always sprinting, you feel like there's something broken at home or at your workplace or within your community, come to the Human Summit. Look it up online, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞.com, and get your early bird pricing. It's good through the next few days, so you don't want to miss out. Take back the power. Learn how to make your world kinder just by showing up and being part of this huge event. We have amazing keynote speakers. We have a panel discussion, and you dig in and talk to others and figure out your own strategy for infusing more kindness into those areas where you feel like it's so hard to come by these days. So show up at the Human Summit. Love to see you there. Today's guest is Melody Owen, and Melody Owen is a publishing expert passionate about empowering authors to create books that inspire positive change. With 2 decades of experience, she's the founder of Author Nation, a community dedicated to helping nonfiction authors share their expertise and leave a meaningful legacy. Melody, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I gave an introduction of you, but I want you to answer for us. What makes you, you?
What makes me, me? Oh, wow. Every moment in my life has come together to make me who I am. And there's this quote that I love, and I can't remember who said it or exactly what it is, but just the idea of it popped up in my head. Is we are not one act. We are the culmination of everything we do. And I find that really helpful. So when I make a mistake or I say something like, oh, wish I didn't say that. It's good for me to remember that I'm the culmination. And if I start going off my values, all I need to do is turn back the other way and go back on my values, because that one thing I did, it's less important than all the things I've ever done. And I think that's who I am. Because I've made we can talk about it. I've made some horrible, I've been a horrible person, Michael. No. You know, and I'm happy to talk about it. But, we've all been a horrible person. And I think that we try to hide that part of ourselves and we're ashamed of it. And if we shed light on it and we realize we're not that one act for everything we've ever done and said, then that's really empowering. So that's who I am, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And I love it. The idea of being a good something or a bad something, I think that cuts us off from being complete. Exactly. And it's so easy to just say, well, oh, no, I can't admit to this because it casts a different image of who I am. So I'm glad you talk about that. Yeah. If you don't mind, you and I were just chatting a little bit before the podcast started about your wide and varied background. I'm wondering if you can just tell our audience just a little bit more about where have you lived? What have you experienced?
Absolutely. So I'm Canadian, and I was born in the province of Ontario to a very unhappy, alcoholic, violent, not kind human being. And my mother was the perfect victim. And so that was my kind of my upbringing. And so I got out of that. I went to university. And then when I was finished in university, I decided I was going to run away. And I got a job teaching English in Japan. And I was running away from my childhood, my parents, my family. I was running away. And then from Japan, I went to South America and I lived in Peru and I taught at a university there for a while. And then Oxford University Press found me and said, hey, you can legally work here. That's great. We're always looking for people like you. They hired me on. I started traveling, Chile, Bolivia, Ecuador, and then I lived there, and then they wanted me and my family because I'd married a Peruvian man and we had a baby, and they wanted me to go to Colombia for the summer. Now at the time Peru had terrorism, but I knew Peru, and I just, for some reason, I'm like, I don't want to go to Colombia for the summer. I just don't. So I put in my notice and said, I'm going home.
Okay.
That's when I came home. So I've lived in a variety of places. I always call that a master's degree. If you travel and you live, not just like vacation on the beach, but travel and live. And if you observe like how people behave, what they say, how they treat each other, and I'm a linguist, so how the language connects and disconnects, and and you put aside how your culture thinks it should be done, and you just watch how other people work together, work alone. It's like getting a master's degree. And so I always say that my travels was, it was a master's degree in humanity. And so that's a little bit of my background. And then I came back to Canada, and instead of moving to Ontario where it snows a lot, I'd been living in, the other side of the equator, but close to the equator. And so I came back to Vancouver because we have less snow here and it's less cold.
Yes. Before we got on, we were talking about how I'm on the East Coast of the U.S. and we're expecting a huge snowstorm here today.
Yes.
And you just said, well, we've been above freezing, and that kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
So with all of these travels and with your interest in people and language, what can you tell our Future is Kind audience about the different kinds of interactions that work well if you're trying to be kind and you're trying to cultivate kindness? What are your strategies for dealing with different people across different cultures to have that better connection?
Yeah. I think one of the best things you can do, and you can do this for yourself as well, when you think you're a bad person and you're feeling shame and all that stuff, is get curious. Just get curious. Don't judge. Put judgment over here. And that's so hard, right? Because judging someone makes us feel better about ourselves. And don't we all want to feel good in this world that tends to really put us down and make us feel like the news, you think about all this messaging we get. It makes us feel like we're not good enough. And there are industries that make billions of dollars by doing that to us. And so judgment feels so good. Set aside judgment and get curious. Just get curious. I wonder why. And when my kids were little, they'd come home and say, well, so-and-so did this and that happened. And I'd say, I wonder why. Like, I wonder what's going on in the rest of their life that they came to school really angry today and behaved like that. And it's just like, okay, different perspective, right? Different perspective through curiosity. And I think that can be one of our foundations. And when somebody comes to you and says, it's just like, this, whatever it is, it's like, wow, what happened to you? What's going on? That this is what's, this is how your life feels right now. Because I think a lot of us want to solve problems, tell people how to fix things.
Sure.
Run away. Oh, that's never happened to me. Like all of these things that we do to protect ourselves, and just letting go of it and just getting curious. And when you're talking to someone who doesn't speak your language very well, get curious. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't understand, but let's try to work it out. I've been in a lot of situations, especially teaching English and running an English program at a college here in Vancouver, Canada, where somebody has very limited English language. I mean, they're brilliant people. They're fluent in their own language, obviously. So it's not, it's, just because there's this whole, if you have an accent, you're not as smart. It's like, no, they're brilliant. They're brilliant. They're just not speaking your language and just trying to get curious. Right. And sometimes international students would come and they'd have a problem, but they were very beginner. And so, okay, how can I help you? And let's try to figure it out. I think get curious, Michael. That's one of the biggest things is just get curious and let go of all the other pieces. Yeah.
It is hard to get curious sometimes, especially in this world that, as you say, we face a lot of judgment. We face a lot of people who are marketing to us and can successfully sell to us if we feel less than. So what is your strategy for getting past that initial worry or that initial moment of, oh no, I'll be judged. Oh no, if I say this thing, if I am this thing, and still maintain that curiosity and that kindness.
Yeah. So the person who trained me was my father. To be very blunt about it, right?
Sure, yeah.
My father was a bully. He was always into the blame game. He loved to shame. These are all the tactics that people like my father abusers use, the blame game, the putting you down to make myself feel better, judging you because I can, bullying you, all of that. And, for a long time as a teenager and a young adult, I couldn't handle confrontation. I would either run or blow up. I went through all of this unable to communicate stage of my life, which many of us go through. Even people who have good parents often come out of childhood not being able to deal with confrontation, not being able to have difficult conversations, right? So even if you're out there listening, you're like, well, I had good parents. It doesn't mean that they taught you how to deal with conflict, right? It doesn't mean that your voice was heard. Even as much as they loved you and cared for you, it doesn't mean you didn't come out whole. Sometimes we have to do a little bit more work, right? Sure. And so to be honest, my father taught me how to not be like him, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, having difficulties in our families of origin can set us up to learn great things. It can also set us up to fall into some patterns. So it's very inspiring that you've learned from it instead of saying, well, I'll just be in denial, which I think is where a lot of us can go. Yeah. It's so easy for people, it did not happen in my household, but I've met a million people who say, my parents always told me it's not okay to cry. You're a boy, boys don't cry, and you're not allowed to do that. Yeah. And that is just from the very get-go being told you have to deny who you are. In this moment, you're feeling this thing, but you're not allowed to, so you have to pretend you don't feel the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I want to say, because there's a lot of, you should forgive your father. And, your father really helped you become who you are. And, you get, when you're an abuse victim, sometimes you get a lot of this messaging. And if there's anyone out there who feels like, they don't like that messaging, I'm going to tell you this. Yes, I learned from my very challenging life, but that's not the best way to teach a child. Right? So, if somebody's like, well, you should be grateful because look, it's like, no, I don't need to be grateful. There are far better ways to raise a whole human being than to hurt them to the point that they never want to hurt another human being. And that did a lot of damage to me. And it took me a lot longer to become who I am now. than if I had had two really good, loving parents who were capable and had skills that they could teach me. So I just want to say that, because there is this kind of like, messaging that I have heard that I just want to make sure if other people have heard that and they're not, it feels off, it's because it is off.
Well, and the key word I think in there is should, right? The fact that you have been able to latch on to some learnings from this, that speaks to just how you see the world and how you've processed. And it's not necessarily a prescription for the next person over, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, well, gosh, I appreciate you being so vulnerable, and I know that it's not always easy to talk about families of origin and some of the traumas that we experience. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do. As a writer, I know that you and I have had interactions, and I've even been on your podcast, Author Nation, having those great conversations. Can you just tell us, what is it that you do with language and with supporting people who write?
Thank you. Yes. And if, listening out there, go listen to Michael's interview on my podcast, because it's awesome. Michael just like dropped some beautiful gems. So go listen to that. Michael, you should put that in the show notes or something.
Of course.
So what do I do? So I have a background in linguistics. And the other thing, and professional writing. So my background is in linguistics and professional writing, and I have a fascination with stories. And you know how they say you do what you need to learn. Storytelling was what I needed to learn in order to center myself in my story and stop being a side character that everyone else just manipulated. So storytelling was my, what I needed to do.
Right.
And I absolutely love stories. So this is what I do. I help people tell stories through books. And so when I say that, most people think, oh, well, you work with memoir. No, actually, I work a lot with medical professionals. Because one of the ways we teach is through story. One of the ways we remember is through story. Story helps us see a path that we can take. Dumping information on someone isn't good enough. We don't remember information. We remember stories. We remember feelings and emotions. I'm not saying we don't remember any information. We got a lot of stuff in here. But when you're reading a book, the storytelling and all those other really important pieces, that's what makes a very complex body of knowledge accessible, enjoyable, impactful. And so when people hear me, oh, you do memoir. Yes, I do memoir and autobiographies, but I also work with people who have a lot of complex information. And I use my linguist side and my storytelling side to help them take that and put it into something that people can like, I can handle this and this is going to change my life. That's what I do.
It's lovely that you are helping voices get channeled into the ways that they need to be so that others can hear those voices.
Yes.
I'm so grateful to you that's what you do. And you mentioned stories. It's absolutely true in my experience. If somebody says, hey, how was your day, Michael? I will not, say, well, I woke up at 5:12. I then stood up. I then walked over to the sink. It's like the factoids can be of interest, but if it's more of a compelling, today is the big day when I'm finally going to get the dog that I've always wanted. I mean, that's a much more compelling story than I woke up at 5:12. And
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and data scientists, I've worked with data scientists who have a lot of information and they need to go, I've even talked to, I've helped oral storytelling for data scientists. They're going into a meeting at work and they've got all this data and they're talking to non-data people. It's like, well, there's a story in there somewhere because the data came from somewhere. So there's a story in there. Let's find it. Because if you can express the data through a story, people are going to get it. We understand humanity. We don't understand numbers. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And thanks for saying that. I really liked how you said that. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah. The fact that you do this as, a living it means that you come into all contacts with all kinds of people. And in your background, you have come into contact with people of various cultures who speak different languages. I want you now to do an experiment that on Our Future is Kind, we always love to do. Okay. And that is, we are going to envision what the future could look like if we are doing everything right. So pretend with me, if you will, that for the next 100 years, we do every single thing right. We are kind to other people. We're supportive. We write great books and make great literature and art. Wonderful. Okay. What does it look like? It's 2125. You're looking around, and what are you expecting to see if we've all done it the right way?
Yeah. I see a world where shame no longer belongs, where people have mercy for one another, where people don't need to make themselves feel good by harming others. We empower ourselves and our community by helping others, supporting others. We value each other, not because somebody's earned it, but because everybody is valuable in and of themselves, intrinsically valuable. It's not about earning your value. It's about being born valuable. And we have come to understand that. Yeah. It's funny, but I think we've gone back a little bit to our instinctual selves. Because if you look at, let's take a wolf pack, right? There's some awful things that happen in wolf packs, right? But it's not about, when we look at it, it's like, oh, that's awful. But it's not about being awful. It's about working together, right? Surviving together. And I believe that we're not wolves. We have another level of cognition. And so we can get back to that place where it's about all of us without the ugly side, if that makes sense. So going back to the instinct, but using our higher cognition to remove what is no longer necessary for humans. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
All of that made sense, and it's lovely, and I want to live in that world. That's no shame, and the idea of people all intrinsically have value.
Yeah.
That sounds absolutely lovely. So we're going to flip that on its head now.
Okay.
That's the future that we want to live in.
Yes.
What are the kind acts, the courageous acts? What are the things we will need to do to make it so?
I believe we start with the very youngest members of society. And we change how we're raising our children. That is the number one thing we can always do, is take away I'm going to talk about a couple of studies that I'd read. One, there was a study that looked at kind of the, genius level, creativity level of very young children. And they're just like so much creativity, like genius level creativity, right? And then you put them through our school system. Right. By the time they come out, it's gone.
Right.
So we need to start with our children. We need to stop oppressing them through our parenting, through our school system, through the way we design society. We need to stop oppressing them, because if we want in 100 years for this world to be a good place, we need to teach our children how to parent the next generation, right? We need to do our best to parent them. And there was another study I read, and I always this was just the most magical thing. I think it was in Detroit, and they started a preschool, and families had to apply for the preschool. And the commitment was bring your kid every day. It was really just the commitment, right? And so families applied. Now, this was in a neighborhood in Detroit where, you know, most kids had a parent who'd been to jail. Most kids had a parent who was addicted. Most kids had single parents. Right? It was a really challenging environment to grow up in.
Yeah.
And they just said, we just need you to show up with your child every day. Started in preschool. And they taught them how to communicate, how to say yes, no, please, thank you, you're welcome. Teach how to share. They taught them these like basic skills. And those children went home every evening to the family where there was a parent in prison and addiction and other struggles. And then those children went on to elementary school, and then they went on to high school, and they completely changed the trajectory of the family's life. Those kids, most of them graduated university.
Wow.
Those kids, almost none of them went to prison. Addiction, that disappeared. And so if you want to make a change in society, you change how you treat the children at the very, very beginning, because there's a lot of impressions that are made. There's a lot, we imprint their life on them very early on. So that's what I believe we need to do, is we need to focus on the very youngest. And of course, offer supports for all of us, but you know, there's only so much money, right? There's only so much time. I do believe, and you know, it sounds a little bit sociopathic, maybe. It's like, forget the older people. That's not really what I'm saying.
Right.
but
No,
but
I
you
get
know,
you.
there's only so much money. There's, you know, political will, all that. Start there. That's the most important thing for long-term change in 100 years.
And with the focus on those children, we've already touched on this just a little bit, but the idea that they are currently being taught, you have to be right, you have to be good, you have to be a good boy, good girl, you have to be the smartest kid in class, you try harder, you're not dressing the right way, don't choose that as your major, you'll never make money in that, you have to choose something else.
Yeah, you're not good at math.
Yeah, there's so many things that we try to do to tell our kids who they are, as opposed to listening to our kids to hear who they are.
Yes.
And I think what you just described is an awful lot of listening and an awful lot of letting them be who they are. Is that right? Am I reading that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Like, you know, don't try to tune them into the channel you want, right? Figure out what channel they're already on.
Oh,
And
I love that.
I'm a client, just so you know. I know she won't mind.
No, I love it. So, gosh, I love how you think we're going to get to the future and that great plan for making it so. I want to know, you wake up on a day-to-day basis, you work with authors, you try to connect with other human beings. What is it that keeps you inspired? What makes you excited to greet the day, feeling like, man, there's optimism in the world and there's reason for it?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big question, Michael, in today's world.
We ask the hard questions here.
Yeah, that's a big question. I think partly I love what I do. That's part of it. I just love what I do. But what if I don't love what I do? I don't think that's an excuse not to wake up feeling inspired and thinking you can make positive change in the world. I think I like to remember that there are so many good people in the world. And if you turn on the news, you're not going to hear about them. So finding the good news people. So here's a great example. You know, we're all on Instagram, right? We're all on X, we're all on Facebook and TikTok or wherever you happen to be. A lot of the algorithms tend to send us the negative, right? The fights, the things that gets us going and sucked in. I often follow people who have really positive things to say every day. There's one, I think she calls herself the Good News Girl. She just tells a positive story every single day. And so, yes, there is a lot of negative in the world. And I don't want to be an ostrich who puts her head in the sand. So I do read more kind of analysis materials. But in the day-to-day, I don't focus on what next crazy thing somebody said or did, or the worst tragedy that just happened of the day. That's not the news I tend to focus on, because that's the news that brings you down. And then once you're down, you are incapacitated. And I do not want to be incapacitated. And I've seen a lot. Now I'm Canadian. All right. And so I'm not in the United States, but I have seen a lot of people on both sides. And this is not a political issue, on both sides, feeling incapacitated, feeling like they don't have the power, feeling like everything's bad. But the news cycle seems to want to keep you there because that's how they make money. And so no matter what political side you're on, look for the good every day. Find people to follow that aren't talking politics. They're just talking something positive about the day. They're just saying, if you're into science, follow someone who talks about like new interesting science discoveries that could help humanity. Or, if you love animals, follow somebody who talks about a wonderful rescue story every day. But find your inspiration. That's what I do. I find outside of work, because it's easy for me to say, well, I love my work and that's it. But there are people listening who don't love their work, and their work is what pays the bills. And they need inspiration out of that. And my answer is find what inspires you, and don't follow all the other people on your social media. Follow the good people, not because you want to live in a bubble and put your head in the sand, but because you need that every day just to make it through the day. Right? So be self-care, be good to yourself.
So let me ask you this. What do you do for self-care? What are the routines that you get into? Is it exercise or meditation? What are the things that keep your body as well as the rest of you going?
Great question. First off, the first thing in self-care is kindness to self. This is the Kindness Podcast. And a lot of us talk to ourselves the way we would never speak to our children or somebody else we love. And so, number one, I do not beat myself up. I practice self-kindness, and I think that's incredibly important. And so physically, it's interesting that you ask, because 18 months ago or so, I was hiking in the Yukon. It was August. I was having the most wonderful time. And I fell into a boulder field. My foot got caught, and me and my backpack tumbled, broke my lower leg in several pieces. So I was rescued by helicopter and small plane, and get insurance when you're hiking, side note. And so this active person who was playing volleyball, who was hiking, and, I used to walk or bike everywhere instead of, drive, or, this person who was super active, couldn't walk. I had to go to physiotherapy. I had to learn to walk again. And after I learned to walk, I started hiking again and doing all these things, and I was constantly in pain. And so we've realized there's something else wrong. And so, and I tried and tried and tried. And then, last November, the orthopedic surgeon says, you may have to change your life. And of course that made me really upset. No, I don't. Sure. No, I don't. And so I'm so lucky that I work with medical professionals, because one of my doctor clients said, did you know about this clinic? And I said, no. She says, go to your family doctor, get a referral to this clinic. That's how it works in Canada, by the way. Okay. So, and this is actually very recent. So very recently I made an appointment with my doctor, who I'll see next week, and I'll ask for a referral to this clinic. And so what do I do physically? Very little, very little right now, because I'm dealing with chronic pain. And that is a huge challenge to my self-care, especially being someone who, I love to put on 30, 40 pounds and go into the mountains in British Columbia and, hike. And so I have a bike inside and I cycle sometimes, but most of the time it's just remembering that this body has climbed mountains. I have 2 children. I gave birth to 2 children, and it has played volleyball, a competitive gymnast. It has carried me this far in life. It has done me good. And it's my turn to just be kind to it and look after it. And Michael, I'm going to tell you, some days that's really hard. Some days I want to throw up my arms and say, this is pointless. This is ridiculous. I can't. And I have my days, those you get up, this is not good, I'm going back to bed days, right? My life is not perfect and it's not all butterflies and rainbows and unicorns. I have some really hard days right now because I so miss the outdoors. I so miss the things that brought me my mental health, my mental wellness, my sanity. And so I have had some really bad days. I have to continue to be kind to myself and remind myself that I'm looking for solutions. Yeah.
I appreciate that advice so much because I know that you are not alone when it comes to saying negative self-talk and kind of throwing up your arms and giving up. James Clear has Atomic Habits, that one really great book that I've looked into over and over again, and he always talks about habits as it's the thing that you do 2 days in a row. So if you're walking every day and then a day you miss it, forgive yourself and then get back into it the next day.
Yeah.
Don't berate yourself because now you've set up this whole thing about I'm bad and I'm horrible and I'm not going to do it. And then the second day happens, and what happens next really depends more on that second time.
Yeah. Yeah. Beating yourself up doesn't work. It's not a effective parenting tactic. It's not a good self-care tactic. It's just not useful. It's not useful.
Right.
If we're talking books, can I recommend a book? Because I'm
please do. Yeah.
a book person, right?
You are.
So if you want to think about the word mercy, this is the person who made me really think about mercy and what mercy meant. It's a book called Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. He's a lawyer and he's talking about death row and mercy. And it is just one of the most powerful books about kindness and mercy. So, read that. To everyone out there listening. If you want to dig into this idea of mercy, read Bryan Stevenson's book.
It's wonderful. Great. Yeah, I can't wait to. All of this, by the way, if you're listening in or watching on the YouTube, know that all of this is going to be in the show notes, so you should be able to look it up and also look in the transcript. So, Melody Owen, what is next for you? What's your next big project? What are you working on? And how can somebody who's listening in help, find you and help support you?
Yeah. So actually, I'm rebuilding the Author Nation website. So if you, by the time this is live, it should be done, right?
Okay, right.
So if you're listening right now, go check out authornationtube.com because it will be a new website for you. And
Wonderful.
so that's something I'm working on right now, which I'm assuming will be done. I'm doing a little bit of my own writing. I'm doing a little bit of nonfiction, I'm actually playing around with some fiction ideas, which is new for me, just for fun, right? To stretch myself. And I'm been working on Nutritious Truth. That's my other business where I help medical professionals with their books. So that's kind of what's on my plate at the moment.
Wonderful. Great. And should people be looking you up at a website or on LinkedIn or what's the best place to find you?
authornationtube.com.
Okay.
Yeah, authornationtube.com, because if you're interested in writing a book, when you get there, it'll just ask you like, where are you in the journey? And then you'll get goodies and things for that.
It sounds like you are a wonderful guide for anybody who is interested in getting that publication out there or advancing some work that you are working on. So, Melody Ann Owen, thank you so much for being on Our Future is Kind.
Thank you. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
This episode's kindness challenge. Practice curiosity over judgment. Next time you feel the urge to criticize someone or yourself, pause and say, I wonder why, and then think about whatever it is that's on your mind. Ask one colleague or friend to tell you something formative from their childhood, and then just listen. No fixing, just presence. Follow one social media account that posts only good news or inspiring stories. Melody recommends this as daily soul fuel. Want to stay inspired so you can stay kind? Read Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. This is the book that reshaped Melody's understanding of mercy and justice. It's available on Amazon. Visit authornationtube.com to access Melody's author community, free tools, and workshops. And remember Melody's mantra, we are not one act, we are the sum of every kind and courageous thing we've ever done.
Thanks again for listening to Our Future is Kind podcast, a podcast in search of a kinder future. Go out there and do something kind.